Okay, welcome to our next in our short series of interviews with HR Director Leadership, where I ask what's next post COVID-19. So joining me today is Graham White, who is a retired HRD with experience in both public and private sectors, and also one of our editorial panelists. So hi, Graham, and thank you for joining me today from Ulster.
Hi, Peter. Great to see you and great to be here with you.
Brilliant. Graham, what I was keen to do, because with these interviews, as I kind of explained, I've been talking to kind of HR practitioners working in organizations who've kind of got the added pressures of stakeholders and shareholders. So I actually thought what would be really interesting is have a little different perspective on the challenges and opportunities from your kind of your where you sit at the moment, which is interesting from looking in, and I know you're doing a little bit of work. So I think let's start off with if you could just give us a brief overview of your illustrious career there, Graham, and just a little bit about you, and then we'll move into the questions.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I HR virtually all of my career. Cut my teeth in the very early days in manufacturing, textiles, carpets, printing, a range of things that were big industries in those early days when I began. Moved from there into the challenging environment of HR director within policing, and then into banking, and was in banking at a good time. I was part of NatWest during the takeover, so that was a really interesting time as well. And after that, I then was invited to have a look at the public sector, and found myself in Surrey and Westminster, working in local government there. Had a fabulous time, worked with some amazing people. And my last public sector appointment was in the NHS, working for a large teaching trust just prior to my retirement.
Wow. So a very diverse mix of public and private sector, as you say. So interesting. All right, good. So Graham, let's start off and kick off with our first COVID-19, and I call this coming through the crisis and preparing for a better future. Better is an interesting word in that, I think, as well, as we're finding. So what would be your present key concerns and perceived challenges for employees and organizations at this stage in this global pandemic?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Peter. And I thought this through, and you know, I can see three major concerns that I think the focus needs to be on. And the first is very simple. So simple that I'm fearful that my colleagues in HRD will actually forget. It's about the fact that what we have is the most anxious workforce than at any other time, I think, than in the history of work. You know, whilst we've seen the world face many crises since the Industrial Revolution right up until now, we have never faced a crisis as different as this. You know, financial crisis, world wars, but we're now facing an invisible esoteric threat. And that's the level of anxiety that gets created because we don't know. It's beyond anything that we've ever prepared for first. So I think the first challenge for both employers and employees is to get ready for that level of uncertainty. Nothing can be taken for granted. Nothing can be assumed to be understood. And you will never communicate enough with your workforce about your plans for restart. Protecting staff well-being will become probably the single most important role for HR in this period of preparation and for the first few weeks and months of startup. My second concern relates more to about employer inactivity, and I'm checking in with colleagues, and I'm just worried that I'm not hearing enough noise or feeling that there's sufficient sense of urgency by all HR departments as they should be planning and building their return to work strategies for their organizations. Planning ahead and consulting with employees is a fundamental requirement to ensure a smooth transition back to work. And as I've said on more than one occasion now, this is not just a return after a period of shutdown or even after a long period of industrial action. This is a restart for employers, and nothing will be the same. And nothing is guaranteed to go back to the way it was. And I just feel I'm not hearing enough around the preparation for that. And so I'm adding it almost as a warning to my colleagues. You know, if you're doing little or nothing other than sending out emails and updates to your workforce, it's not enough. You know, this is a restart, and handling, maintaining employee trust will be critical going forward. And I think in a year's time, when we look at the employers of choice, it will not be the ones that we measured with old measurements. It will be those that prepared their workforce best for coming back. You know, and my last concern, sorry, three, I'll be brief, but it's this incessant whinging by some employers about not getting enough information or enough help. I accept that the uncertainty is at a very high level, but it's not unprecedented. You know, we can look back at history and see what our predecessor HR directors did and see how they coped. You know, I've read nothing in the history books that tells me that we were complaining that we didn't stockpile Spitfires before the Second World War broke out. You know, in the 1980s, my chief executive didn't complain to government that Eastern European production was cheaper and faster than ours. We just made ours cheaper and faster, you know. And look at the millennium, 1999. We weren't queuing up to blame the government for telling us what, you know, why do we not know what was going to happen? We just got ready, we modeled, we planned, we looked at options, you know, we prepared. So I'm hearing some good work from some good HRDs, but I just don't feel that I'm hearing enough around the modeling and the planning and the alternatives. So yeah, those would be my three big concerns, I think, going forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's really valid. I think absolutely, I'm seeing some really good preparedness. I grant you, but I think you're totally right. Okay, so let's turn our attention to, I guess, keeping everyone. So much as that planning needs to take place, what about those measures to implement to keep everyone safe in terms of the organisations?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of work with a few organisations on this one, Peter, and I've given them what I call my three-stage plan, and I'll share it with you. And it's quite interesting because stage one to me was what I always thought was a blinding flash of the obvious, and yet when I speak to people about it, I'm not hearing a lot of people are doing it. So stage one is simple, right? Survey your workforce. Right? Go out to your workforce and ask them a pulse survey. It doesn't have to be 180, you know, the annual survey that everybody hates. Just, you know, 10 or 12 quick questions to your workforce so that you've got a real litmus test. You've got a real feel for what is the emotional state of my organization the day I open the gates of the factory or the swing doors of the office. And simple questions, you know, do you see any personal barriers from coming back? Will you feel safe to walk through the doors of your office? Have you worked out what your new travel arrangements will be? You know, is the staggered school start going to cause you a problem? Is there anything we can do to help with that? You know, is home working for you? Are we keeping you informed of our plans? These are not rocket science questions, but when you ask them, you will get back an emotional response, because these questions are seeking that emotion, and then you'll realize just what position is my workforce in for that, you know, that day. At stage two, well, it's now become my mantra, I think. HR directors, and this is for them, guys, ladies. This is not a reopening. This is a restart. Okay, wait, this is not going back to where we left off. There are some key questions HR directors need to be putting to their executive colleagues as they prepare for this restart, you know, and some tough questions too. And I was reading some excellent work from PwC on this, where you know, the fundamental question coming out is, can the organization remain the current size it is? You know, has the work we've had to do made us realize that the way we do our business isn't the best way to do our business? So HRDs, we need to start talking to the executive teams about, are we the right size or are we overstaffed? What has furloughing made us realize in terms of our organization? Are we future-proofing our products or services? You know, have we determined the future business levels in years 1 and 2, because it's going to be different. You know, they're queuing up at my local McDonald's at the moment because it opened yesterday, you know, but they're not going to queue up forever. You know, so are HRDs thinking about that? Are we talking to suppliers and customers about what is changing for them? You know, are their orders going to change? You know, if I had any money at all, I think I'd open a PPE manufacturing site in Northern Ireland, you know, because you're safe for the next 10 years in terms of orders. And so, yeah, you know, that's something like that. And I guess the tough question, and this is always the awkward one, but have we done our sums as HR directors, and have we considered the resources needed for the restart compared with the current cost of furlough savings? And you know, and what I'm really talking about there is what I see some of the more thoughtful companies now having to consider. Are we facing redundancies? You know, and what is the balance about that? You know, so I think in stage 2, HR directors, get the executive around that table and get these tough questions on the table. Get your production guys talking, get your business planners talking. But we need to know what this restart really is going to look like. And lastly, on a practical level, and this is very practical, so forgive me if this sounds too basic, but publish a comprehensive reopening plan. You know, get it out there. And when I say publish, I mean send it to every employee. Let them see exactly what is in it. I produced a couple of these plans for 2 organisations, one in the UK and one in Northern Ireland, and 24 simple steps that they need to do. And I'm not going to list them all for you now, but some of them are very fundamental. But you know, publish the amount of cleaning that you did and let your staff know before they come back just how much has taken place to get the place ready. You know, let them see what the new cleaning regime is going to be. You know, get it up on your notice boards. Let them understand that. Rethink meetings. Why have meetings? Who gets invited to meetings? You know, change all of that. Canteens, I think, could be a thing of the past. You know, so what is the alternative? How do you prepare to allow people to bring food in and to work with that? You know, and looking at space and looking at the shape of your organization. I don't know about you, but boy, have I worked in some messy offices. You know, and 80% of that junk just sitting there, sat there from the day I arrived till the day I left. You know, so there's so much to be done about that. Closing off parts of the building that you don't actually really need. And if you're worried that too many people are in a room, well, take the chairs out. You know, if there's only 6 chairs, only 6 people will go in. You know, and good stuff. You know, post signs encouraging people about non-contact breeding. Big one, of course, is this will drive paperless, won't it? You know, we'll see an even bigger move on that, and that's going to help because that's going to push the other business stuff around no signature and how we can make documents legal without as well. And a really good one which I thought of, and I made the point of going to see a building at shutdown. Stagger leaving times, because I can tell you when it's end of day, it's like a funnel. Everybody is pouring out that door. So stagger leaving times. So the plan doesn't have to be wonderfully scientific, but it has to have in it all of the assurances that staff will need. And what I found with the one that I produced and used, people have come back and said, gosh, I didn't even think about it until I saw you were doing something about it. And that gives employers a great, a high moral ground, a great sense of gratitude for employees, that their employers are thinking much wider and much broader. I mean, the silly ones. Don't have a pen for signing visitors in. Get them to use their own pen, because you don't want everybody touching, the same pen. Just basic stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I would be saying that I'd be wanting to see happening right now. So yeah, pulse, survey the workforce, get out there. It's a double whammy. Not only does it help you understand where they are and where they're coming from, it also makes them realize we're interested. We want to know about them and what matters to them. A good question in there, of course, is to say, do you know how to raise concerns if you have any? Do you feel we're listening to you? Get them in there as well. Sorry, I'm rambling on about that one, but I find that approach is working.
Yeah. No, Graham, I think that's really good. I think absolutely this learning, this speaking to you to make sure they've got the confidence to come back, and that reassurance is really key. And I agree. It's got to be about this. It's got to be a change. It's got to be a positive change and something better, not just going back to what you were. So I really like some of those ideas. And normally, sometimes the most simplest of ideas are the ones we quite rightly forget, don't we? And think everyone's thinking about, but they're not. Okay, so let's move on to this. This is more than looking at, I guess I'm looking at this from a company's journey destination, where they set their 1 year, 5 year, 10 year plan, normally about 1 or 2 years now. And I guess what I'm trying to get at here is do you feel that this COVID-19 have a huge impact on their destination and journey, and should it, and kind of how will it impact HRDs, HR functions, and the employees?
Yeah. Peter, this was the best question you could ever ask. Even as I was reading the question, I was getting excited about, because it's not just asking me a question, it's reminding me that it's a fact that things are going to be different. COVID-19 has been an appalling tragedy for so many families in our country, Peter, but the future is changed forever. Okay, I cannot think of a single aspect of work as we know it that will remain unchanged, either directly or at least indirectly as a consequence of COVID-19. The future for HRDs, I think, is in their own hands, and I'm reading some good stuff in both the HR Director magazine and online that there's a lot of HRDs stepping up. It's good to see it, but it is in their own hands. And let me say this: if HRDs do nothing apart from just prepare to open a couple of doors, well, then I think there are other people in their workforces, others in their executive team, who will see the opportunity and push HR aside and take this high ground. So I think this isn't just an opportunity for HRD, I think it's a challenge. This is the opportunity to prove the worth that we have always known we've had, and here's the chance to do it. I mean, I can take some examples. Recruitment will change forever. Greater opportunities for home working opens up a global recruitment catchment area that we never thought we had before. Having worked in Southeast England, I've lived the nightmare of, you put an advert out, you don't even get an applicant. It's a terrible. No, not anymore. No, we've suddenly discovered that home working is a credible alternative. And if you're home working, I don't really care where you work. So recruitment absolutely changed forever. We can compete in the market where we didn't feel we could compete before, and I think that's amazing. HR technology, more than anything, non-core HR functions have threatened the viability of organizations facing COVID-19. So according to HR colleagues, it hasn't been the things we thought that would be hard to deal with that were causing the biggest problems. It was the silly little things, like the HR payroll system can't be dealt with remotely. And there's nobody in the office. I can't manage payroll. I can't manage time management. I can't do performance management because it's all on a desktop computer that's not linked to the cloud. And forgive me, that's a reality. And I bet you there's a few HRDs watching this right now, tugging at their collars, realizing, do you know what? That's like us. We may have the greatest manufacturing technology or the greatest planning technology, but actually HR sitting on that desktop machine. So yeah, technology, HR technology is going to change. The companies with their HR IS systems on the cloud have cruised through this, but others have had real problems. Even contact details. We've been using data protection as the excuse for not having systems where managers could be at home and have all the contact details of their staff. That's got to change. We've got to find alternatives for that. So big one for HR technology. Performance management, I don't know where to begin. And Peter, you've read any of my articles, I am hugely disappointed in my profession. Finally, HR will have to come of age and embrace a century of failing to get performance management right, because we now have to fix it. See, you can't have home working. You can't have satellite working and have no measure of performance. You know, what's the biggest concern I hear from chief executives? If I send them home, they'll all be watching Netflix. You know, that can't be. If they've got a product to produce or a task to complete, you have the process to measure it. You just haven't got a way of doing it yet. Employers need to know their workers are productive, and I accept that, whether in the office or at home. But I have to say too, I've had plenty of people skiving in the office as much as I've had them skiving at home. But you know, we won't do that with the current performance mantra, you know, bums on seats presenteeism. It will only work if HR can take ownership of a new performance regime that places impact over effort. You know, it's not who's doing the most work, it's who's getting the best result. And lastly, on this one, with the big tech companies doing it already, and I follow, you know, them all, the Googles and the PayPals. These guys, their HR teams are fantastic. You know, they're planning meteoric shifts away from daily commuting. You know, they've discovered the power of home working and how little impact it has on their organizations. And HRDs need to think this through and be assessing organizational space needs, because it's not a hard sum to calculate. You know, there are offices in London, £100 per square foot per week. You know, if you've got 40% of your workforce working at home, you don't need 40% of your £100 per foot per square week ever, you know. And so the consequential impact, consequential business savings on that approach too is absolutely amazing. So yeah, for HR, the future is so different. Everything changes, you know, recruitment changes, the technology will change. We will finally have to have cracked performance management, and space management will become an HR function, because it's a resource that we will have the greatest impact to squeeze the best financial efficiency out of.
Well, you certainly came alive there, Graham. The passion came through there. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Some really, really good sort of ideas for the future. Totally agree with all of that. And do you see just this end, just, I guess, organizations as a whole, they're kind of, I don't know, ethics or kind of, how does that sit with you? How do you think there's changes depending on, I guess, product or industry? Do you see that changing?
I do, yes, and I touched on this right at the beginning around this issue of an anxious workforce, and what I'm really talking about is well-being, and I think irrespective of what the future holds, and I do think there will be very big changes as a consequence of COVID-19, but I think that the relationship between staff and employer will take a new dimension. I talked about, you know, what would an employer of choice be in future? It'll be those that cared for me and prepared me back to work. I think the next stage after that is those that are starting to see me as much more than a pair of hands. You know, there's a body and a brain and a heart attached to these hands, so I need all of that. I think the handling of COVID-19 by organizations and government has been, I think, been amazing. I mean, I think the furlough scheme, I think the support provided to employers has been tremendous. And whilst I appreciate there's always going to be politicking, when you dig into that, I haven't found too many executive colleagues who aren't saying we wouldn't have coped without the level of government support and guidance. And I think that that's allowed them to show a level of interest and emotional content to their workforce and realize the benefit of it. You know, and I think when take manufacturing, when manufacturing comes back or service industry comes back, I think the attitude and the view of the workforce will be different. I think they will have remembered that, and that will impact on them. And I think good HR directors will capitalize on that and will continue that and build that in. You know, we've done a little bit with emotional intelligence, but we haven't really done enough with it with our leadership teams and with our managers to equip them to see the value of the soft skills as well as the hard skills. I think all of that presents an opportunity for organizations to see that there's real value in this idea of investing in the whole person rather than just the function that they provide.
Yeah, and I equally agree with government. It's a very difficult situation that none of us have kind of gone through. As you say, historically there's been something similar, but not in our lifetime. So I think the furlough gave time, didn't it? Gave employers time to kind of work out, and there's some tough decisions to make ahead. But yeah, let's do it in the right way. Okay, good. Okay, great. That is terrific. And the final question for you then. in this historic COVID-19, as you say, a horrendous situation, incredibly challenging, difficult but exciting to be an HR leader, or not? Did you retire too early, Graham?
Yeah. The answer is very simple, Peter. Absolutely, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I am having a ball. I cycle 3 times a week. When the pools were open, I was swimming twice a week. I walk our dog 4 or 5 miles a day. I volunteer in some local church social activities. I've got back into my painting. I am having a good time, but all of that pales into insignificance when I see the revolution that is coming on the tail of COVID-19, and it's a technology revolution. And whilst I look like a boring old grey-haired fart, I love technology, and it will accelerate the value of digitization in the world. We've seen it in lockdown, stuck in our homes, and the world didn't collapse. And as a consequence, I think they're saying that in the next 5 years, 40% of today's workplace skills will at least change, if not become obsolete. And what better a time for an HR director to be in amongst that with his sleeves rolled up, getting stuck in. The evidence is already there that across industry and commerce, 60% of the jobs that people do, at least a third of it could be automated. And HR could be in the heart of that. Helping to work through job carving and creation, and getting rid of those old processes and policies, because they are not going to work in an automated AI environment. In the broadest sense, I would love to be in the heart of that. When you move from a centralized to a decentralized digital workplace, it needs credible, vibrant HR presence to make it happen effectively, because it is big disruption. The Industrial Revolution moved work from the farms into the factories. And then the service revolution moved them from the factories to the shared service centers, but they were all still in there. But now suddenly the accelerated digitization that's coming on the back of COVID-19 suddenly means that this sleeping giant AI is going to move things out of the center. The automation is going to take place. I mean, I've been making phone calls about cancelled holidays. And I'm ringing people in their homes, and they're chatting to me about my refund, and they're telling me they're with their family, and they're doing a good job for me. I'm happy with it. And office workers, I mean, you look at office where 80% went home and the world didn't collapse. The things are still happening. So yeah, who wouldn't in HRD want to be back in HRD for the next 3 to 5 years? It will be a fantastic time for us. But I give the warning, and I always do, Peter, but if we don't step up, somebody else will. This is gonna happen, and us refusing to accept it's gonna happen won't stop it. It will just mean somebody else will take on the leadership mantle and do that. So yeah, wish I was 45 again.
I think that's a very poignant way to end our interview, Graham. That is terrific. I appreciate your time and your insights, which I think have been fascinating. So thank you very much. Join me next time, everyone, when I catch up with another HR director, and we'll find out how they're navigating and exploring challenges and opportunities for this better way and this reset. Thank you, Graham.